History's been made tonight at the Democratic National Convention. Kamala Harris is now officially the Democratic nominee for vice president.
Before Harris's speech, a long list of Democratic royalty delivered speeches of their own, including former President Barack Obama. Joining us now for some analysis on what we've heard from the third night of the Democratic National Convention is our political reporter Taman Bradley and our political analyst Paul Lisnick. We just heard from Senator Harris. For many in this country, it's an introduction of sorts to her. But from her, we didn't hear anything in the way of policy, more platitudes, Taman.
No, that's absolutely right. But first of all, it was very effective because she does have that disarming smile. She has a long, extensive resume, a compelling personal story, the daughter of an Indian woman and a Jamaican man, and that's what she wanted to tell. But yes, all night long, frankly, this was thin on policy. During the 8 o'clock Central Time hour, we did hear talk about gun control and immigration, but we didn't hear specifics in terms of what the Democrats would do. And the reason that is, the reason that they're so thin on the specifics this week.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're looking at a live picture right now. Kamala Harris and presidential nominee Joe Biden right there on stage together and joined by their spouses. There's Jill Biden and Kamala's husband right
Doug.
there. Talking after her speech. She just completed it, for those of you who didn't see it. And,
normally this moment would be filled with balloons and confetti and cheering crowds and
I think
whatnot.
the balloons will come Thursday, would have come Thursday though, when Joe Biden speaks.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's nothing like it would normally be, and we know that. It's virtual, so we know that it is not the normal convention, and they have mentioned that. But let's talk a little bit about what Barack Obama said earlier this evening. A very interesting soundbite. Let's listen.
For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe.
Paul, this soundbite from former President Barack Obama really got the ire of Donald Trump, who's been tweeting all night long. What do you think about what he said tonight?
Well, first of all, no surprise that it, got the ire of Donald Trump. But at the same time, look, Democrats have been very frustrated, Micah, for the last several years that President Obama really has taken a back seat to everything going on. Democrats have been frustrated. They wanted him to speak out. He is the most respected member of the Democratic Party. And so tonight, he finally says Donald Trump's name. He's rarely said it in the last 3 years. We know he's referring to him, but he doesn't talk about him. Tonight, he threw the punches. It's not the kind of speech we expect Obama to give. I think if you asked him, he would tell you he didn't want to give this kind of speech, but the stakes couldn't be higher from the Democrats' point of view tonight, so he absolutely hit him. We talked about the game show again. All of it sets up the fact that Joe Biden is the many ways polar opposite of who President Trump is.
Can I just finish the thought, guys, about the policy? Keep in mind that Joe Biden was many Democrats' second choice for president, and Kamala Harris did not run a good presidential campaign during the contest. And so the left wing of the Democratic Party that wants Medicare for all, that wants things that are not in the center where Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are, may not be so sure about these candidates, but they're united because they want to defeat President Trump. And so we don't hear a rallying cry for Democratic causes as much. We don't hear specifics because of that reason.
But you did get, if I can say, in the first hour, as Taman hinted at before, we did get gun control, immigration, the environment, abortion, women's power. Those are all of the issues that are critical to who Democrats are. At the same time, you can almost get ready for next week when the Republicans have their week. We're going to hear almost the exact opposite on all of those issues.
But they didn't say what they would do on immigration, for example, or gun control. What's the gun legislation that they're championing? That was not raised.
Yeah, a lot of things were just laid out, the situation going on in America right now. But Taman, I think Paul is saying that nothing has been resolved. They haven't said how they will resolve this. Let's listen again to something else that President Obama said.
None of this should be controversial. These shouldn't be Republican principles or Democratic principles. They are American principles. But at this moment, this president and those who enable him have shown they don't believe in these things. Tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of these dark times and build it back better.
The reality that just about 4 years ago, though, Democrats were shocked that Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton in the electoral vote was on full display also tonight. You heard these appeals from everyone from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama and others about vote, 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 vote. Taman, is the feeling really still high concern that perhaps people are getting a little too confident on the Democratic side of things?
Well, you heard Hillary Clinton say that this is not the time for coulda, woulda, shoulda, referring to some Democrats who maybe stayed home 4 years ago and didn't vote for her. There's also great concern about funding for the post office and about the possibility of vote by mail being held up, delayed, it taking time to count the ballots. But you're right. Since the very beginning of the program tonight, we have heard that message again and again about voting. But so much of it was you can trust Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, identity politics. You can trust us with the keys to the Mercedes. Donald Trump has wrecked the car.
All right. Let's listen to what Kamala Harris had to say, some of what she had to say.
We must elect a president who will bring something different, something better, and do the important work. A president who will bring all of us together, Black, white, Latino, Asian, Indigenous, to achieve the future we collectively want. We must elect Joe Biden.
So what we get tonight from Kamala Harris is not just the notion of, and from everybody, the empathy of Joe Biden, but you hear there, and this was a theme, you heard it from Barack Obama, you're hearing it from a lot of the people speaking at the Democratic Convention, which is this is a time of recognizing unity, of not going after people for the color of their skin or who they love and all of that. Very strong, again, on immigration issues and respecting people for whatever they bring to the party was clearly a part of Kamala Harris's message, because she's going to face, remember, she's got a debate on coming up in October, and she's going to have to face the notion of her being tough when she was a prosecutor, an attorney general. So she's sending the message out now that she respects all people regardless of background.
Yeah, I think that since the very beginning of this, they've tried to portray the Biden-Harris ticket as the antithesis of the Pence-Trump administration. Thank you both for your analysis tonight. And special coverage of the Democratic National Convention continues this hour. Coming up in just a few moments, we'll have live coverage of speeches by President Obama. Oh, that's not wrong. We had those live speeches. But we're going to have more right after this.